Good evening. I'm Veronica Kazanjian-Babian, graduate from the class of 1995 and from the Office of Alumni Relations at Thomas Jefferson University. I'm happy to welcome you to tonight's Rams Athletic Update with Coach Tom Shirley. Coach Shirley will provide us with highlights and updates regarding Jefferson's student athletes, our programs, and how you have helped make a difference. At the bottom of tonight's presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask Coach Shirley questions, and you can use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you don't see the button, just move your mouse and the Q&A button should appear. And now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest, Coach Tom Shirley. Tom Shirley entered his 32nd year at Jefferson in 2020-2021 academic year after joining the athletic department in 1989. He currently holds the role of Vice President of Athletics and head women's basketball coach. He is 3 wins away to reaching 800 for his career. He will be the 17th coach in NCAA women's basketball history to hit this milestone. Coach Shirley has been honored by the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics as the AstroTurf Division II Northeast Region Athletic Director of the Year in 2007. He has also been selected by his peers as the CACC Athletic Director of the Year for both 2014-15 and 2015-16 school years. Coach Shirley, thank you for providing us with tonight's Rams Athletic Update. We're pleased to see you again. The floor is all yours.
Veronica, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Nice to be with you. Thank you for joining us. For those of you that have been here before, I hope you'll get refreshed in some information. And for those of you that are new, I hope we can share some tidbits about the university. So with that being said, the first thing I'd like to do is make sure I thank everybody that had in the past has either shown interest in our program and supported our student athletes, or has been a benefactor and has helped us with any kind of financial support. And certainly that comes through the Rams Rise Up Challenge and our annual golf outing every year, as well as just different levels of unrestricted gifts. So we really appreciate that, and it means a lot to our student athletes. The first thing I want to do is just go through some slides for you so you can get updated a little bit about where we are with the conference and where we are with our enrollment and things like that. So Veronica will lead the way here. So right now, the 2021 season is a little bit interrupted, as you can imagine, and I'll go over that in a minute, but I'll go through these slides quickly for you. Okay. So just a reminder that we are in a Central Atlantic Collegiate Conference, which is probably the most geographically friendly conference in the country in Division II. We have a 4-hour footprint that runs from Wilmington, Delaware, up to Waterbury, Connecticut. So very student athlete friendly, missed class time friendly. We joined that conference in 2005 as Philadelphia University, and then we had to rejoin it in 2017 as Thomas Jefferson. And as you can see, we've won 35 conference championships in our 15 years, and of our 17 sports, 15 are in the league. The only 2 that are not are women's rowing and women's golf, because the league does not offer those championships. This is our full-time staff, which has grown immensely. One of my good friends, Randy Gensler, who's on the call tonight, who's our former CFO and was really instrumental initially in helping us get more full-time staff to take care of our student athletes. But most recently, we've made Dave Thomas, who's a terrific cross-country coach, full-time. He coaches 4 of our sports, and Norman Patton, who's coaching both our men's and women's tennis. They've become full-time coaches, which has made a big difference. And of course, we're trying to tie other job opportunities in to substantiate that, with Pat Horvath, our baseball coach, doing community engagement, and Coach Myers, our soccer coach, doing intercollegiate athletic recruiting. And then we also mentioned a number of years there, and you can see Coach McGee leads the group and is back for 2021 in his 54th season. So we still do have some part-time coaches, so women's soccer, women's lacrosse, our 2 golf programs. The golf program for the women is our newest sport. We added that 3 years ago, and our softball coach are still part-time, but I think when the pandemic ends and things get back to normal, that's the next thing we'll be working on. We have 17 part-time assistant coaches, and we have 11 volunteer coaches. This is a look at our roster spots for this year. So you can see we have 182 women and we have 132 men, and then we have 24 that are dual sport athletes. A lot of that's reflected in our cross country and track numbers, young people that are running actually both sports, and then we have a cheerleading group as well. So we have 300 out of about 2,500 population that are playing intercollegiate athletics for us. And we have a couple things that are happening or were supposed to happen. Our Rams Rise Up Challenge is on the way, which is November 12th, 2020. And Chris O'Brien's going to talk a little bit more about that. And the Athletic Hall of Fame, which was scheduled for last year, we typically do that in the even numbered years. Obviously, fell victim to the pandemic. So we are rescheduling that for April 30th, 2021. And we have a great class of 6 individuals going in. And the Robert Lockyer Golf Invitational, which was scheduled for June of 2020, will be in June of 2021, and it'll be held at the 1912 Club, which is formerly the Plymouth Country Club. And it's a great day for us. And Bob Lockyer is just a wonderful man who's helped us immensely. So these are some of the highlights from last year in terms of conference championships: women's cross country, women's soccer, women's basketball. Women's cross country and women's basketball actually had back-to-back championships. Some major award winners for the individual athletes: Erin Tinney, Laurel Eric, and Kylan Guerrera. Kylan was actually named, that should be men's basketball. Kylan was actually named a first-team All-American for us and is signed a contract recently to play in Puerto Rico. Dave Thomas, Socrates, and Coach McGee all received Coach of the Year awards. And the Restaino Cup, which is given out to the team that acquires the most points based on athletic success, is given the Restaino Cup, and that went to our women's sports team. And I think we mentioned Kylan down here. And then in terms of NCAA appearances, women's soccer did go to the NCAA tournament, and men's basketball and women's basketball actually got to New York and Bridgeport, respectively, and we had to turn around and come home because the tournament was canceled. We finished our seasons the first week of March, and the second week of March is when we went up to the NCAAs and got canceled. So from a women's standpoint, we actually finished the season on a win, so it was great, and we look forward to another season. Okay. And then some athletic highlights. Veronica was kind enough to mention about this coming season for myself. Coach McGee and I together, we rank as the #1 duo in victories. We have 1,920 total victories, with him having 1,123 and me 797, which leads him to introducing me as a JV coach all the time, but I've gotten used to that. In terms of academic highlights, our baseball, volleyball, men's basketball, and cross-country programs received individual academic awards respective to their sport. And probably the one we're the most proud of is the President's Award for Academic Excellence, which is announced by the NCAA and their presidents, actually. And it's given out to schools that have a 90% or higher graduation rate. And this is year 10, and 9 out of 10 years we've finished in the top 10. And this year we were actually #2 at 98%. This past year, the 20 will be announced early in 2021. The other thing that I wanted to do, because we get asked this a lot, is when we do receive some philanthropic gifts in the Ram Rise Up Challenge and the golf outing, what happens to the money? Well, the university's always been great. Again, going back to Randy Gensler days of taking care of our student athletes and covering operational expenses. I mean, we're not out fundraising to pay for referees or uniforms or things like that. But, each generation of young people, they want above and beyond. They want the coolest things. And we can't always just swap things out year in, year out. So when the fundraising happens, each individual sport has their own fundraising account. So if Coach O'Brien does some fundraising for crew, that goes into his crew account, and he can spend that on crew crew items. When we do get some unrestricted gifts that go into our Ram Fund, which kind of covers a bunch of things, really. So some of the things that we've been able to spend money on, which I want to mention, and I kind of listed the top 10 over the last 3 years, is we purchased windscreens for our baseball and tennis courts. And in the case of our baseball, we've talked about the past All-Americans that we've had and past CACC championships and regional championships that we participated in. We've assisted the crew program with the purchase of a launch and an engine for the launch. The crew team is now located down on the Schuylkill River at the Crescent Boat Club. We've been down there, I think, Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're coming up on our 4th year. So that's been a great move to go down there and leave Conshohocken, where we founded the program, where Chris O'Brien founded the program. This will sound like a crazy one, but for those of you that have been to our soccer games and lacrosse games, the closest place to use a restroom is Weber Hall. And that's a little bit of a walk, and there's not very many options. So about 3 years ago, we decided to start using portable restrooms for soccer season and lacrosse season. And that's funding that came out of our Ram Fund. And that's been a great success for not only our student athletes, but our fans as well. And not only for games, but for practices as well. The other thing is everything is now about live streaming. So we've been able to help our sports information director with new cameras and GoPros so we can stream the outdoor sports. We were streaming and continue to stream the basketballs and the volleyball, but now we're moving into the outdoor sports. So parents and family friends can actually watch our student athletes play. We've purchased some stimulation machines for the athletic training room to help with, athletes that need stim before and after games. We've purchased some new spin bikes for our fitness center, which have been great. And we've gotten out of the pen and pencil stage and purchased a recruiting service called Front Rush, which once we input, information regarding contacts, name, address, ID numbers, everything is now computerized for not only our coaches, but also our compliance officer. One of the things we also did was put a scoreboard in use in the Harris Gymnasium, which is the back gym, which used to be the gym. So now we can use that for intramurals and actually intercollegiate practices as well. And we put an additional batting cage in Harris Gym for softball and baseball. We have so many players. We have 47 baseball players and 25 softball players that trying to get batting cage time was a challenge. So we've at least increased it by 1. And that's worked out pretty well for us. And we've also done some funding for intramural and club sports. So those are the kind of things that come out of the Ram Fund, and they're kind of just when either people don't have enough money in their fundraising, or it's just something that we have a need for that really has to be taken care of. That's the way we go. So just some other updates institutionally. The university and the classes have been up and running. We're on a hybrid model with the dormitories open, the cafeterias are open, the fitness center and the gymnasium is open, but we're doing a hybrid model where students that are comfortable staying at home can do so. And some of the students that are actually in the dormitories are taking some classes online as well. And that's worked out well. It's Dr. Jeff Cromartie. I don't know if he's on the call, but he's our COO in this campus and has done a great job with trying to manage that with all the different movements that happen every day with regarding to this. So that'll continue till November 20th, and then their semester will finish online off campus. So we'll kind of start to build a little bubble over the break, and then we come back to the hybrid model on January the 20th. So there'll be about a 2-month gap, and hopefully this will start moving in a better direction. All of our staff is still employed. Some are helping do other things to stay gainfully employed, but the university has been great. There's been no cuts. There's been no benefit cuts. So we appreciate that. Student recruitment continues both through the admissions department and through athletics. All of our coaches are recruiting. One of the challenges we're faced with now is the fall sports from last year and the winter sports from this year were granted an extra season of eligibility. So we have to make that balance between inviting some of our seniors to come back and play that were on scholarship, and of course offering them similar scholarships, as well as trying to maybe go out and recruit kids from the class of 21 and 22. So it's a dicey situation, and the 21s are panicking a little bit because they're concerned about not getting any college scholarship offers. But we're managing that the best we can. Everything has been virtual, so our open house we just had through admissions was virtual, and we certainly participated in that as well. Again, when we do come back, everyone will be looking to play in the spring. So all 17 sports with 300 student athletes will be looking to play. We're going to have a modified, and all of our sports will be modified, but our soccer seasons will actually start in March and finish in late April. Volleyball and the basketball seasons, we expect to come back in December and start playing in January. Again, a 19-game modified season. Soccer's and volleyball will not have an NCAA championship, but the rest of the teams will have an opportunity. That's, of course, if nothing changes and things don't grow worse. But we are planning on offering an opportunity to all of our student athletes for the spring. It will be a challenge to manage it. We will certainly be using some of our Ram Fund money to rent some off-campus turf site to help the soccer and the lacrosse program, but that's the reality of why that money is there. We also have to work within the conference guidelines. We have to work within the university guidelines, and ultimately we have to work within the city guidelines. So that's a challenge because they change, and college presidents make different decisions each day, and that affects us. So it's just as Dr. Cromartie's doing and I'm doing, we're just juggling balls as best we can. But I think despite the challenges, the student athletes are continuing to do well. They're excelling. We've been able in the fall to get together for 8 hours a week, 4 hours without respective balls, and 4 hours with basketballs or volleyballs or baseball. So we've been able to get them out on the field a little bit. The university's been terrific with COVID testing. It's available every day for any students who feel like they have symptoms or anyone that feels like they might be testing positive. They can come in. Megan Grugan has done a great job for us, who's our nurse practitioner. So I feel like the student athletes and the campus community, and there's been dormitory testing as well, have done a terrific job in trying to keep this as isolated as possible. We look at the future. We'll see what the fall brings. We're hoping next year we'll see what the spring brings. We're hoping in the fall we can get back into a normal situation. Everything that we feel like we needed to postpone, I mentioned earlier, and we have postponed. The one thing that we wanted to do last year, but most of them were in Florida and we couldn't do it, was honor the 50th anniversary of the men's basketball national championship in 1970. So we thought February was a good month. They advised us that they're in Florida and it's not a good month. So we moved to a date in the fall, and certainly that's not going to happen. So now we're looking at a spring date. And if we can't pull it off live, we'll do something virtual to honor that team, which won the 1970 national championship, headed by John Parentozzi, who was one of our former staff members as well. We're also planning on a new Living Learning Community Center back in the Raven Hill area, which will be a dormitory, as I understand it, and I believe it's an honors dormitory, but that will also have a turf field with a 6-lane or 8-lane track, depending on budgets. It will accommodate our soccer programs. It will accommodate our lacrosse program, and of course our intramural program. And the biggest thing is it will allow us to add men's lacrosse, which would most likely be the next sport that we add, as right now we have 10 female sports and 7 male sports, and we think we can bring in 50 to 60 men to play a lacrosse schedule, which is a CACC sport. So we would have a home right away. Groundbreaking for that is still up in the air. I mean, the conversation was going to be the summer of 21, but it looks like it'll be delayed because of the COVID. So, but it has remained on the drawing board, and it's something that would be very excited about institutionally and athletically. I guess the final thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to have it with Chris O'Brien, is we have 2 fundraising efforts that we're really trying to push and make traditions, if you will. We have the Ram Rise Up Challenge, which will be held on November 12th for 24 hours, which is a 100% athletic fundraiser for our individual teams. Our student athletes are involved, our coaches are involved. And at the same time, the university is starting to fundraise to support scholarship opportunities. I mean, we're in really good shape with scholarships, but we're not at the NCAA maximum levels. So there's an opportunity here to increase scholarships if we can through benefactors and philanthropic gifts. So we're looking at two separate entities, but we're looking to do that. So Chris, if you don't mind, Chris O'Brien is our assistant athletic director, our head crew coach, who's done a great job, been here 15 years, and he'll talk a little more extensively about the Rams Rise Up Challenge.
Well, thank you, Coach. And thanks everyone for being on the call tonight. Coach mentioned a little bit earlier that our athletes are excited. They're back. They're practicing. They're very resilient in an era where, like a lot of people could be, really, I guess I'll call it down in the dumps because like the season is not how it was. We're not competing. Our athletes are chomping at the bit to get out in the field and to practice and to be with their other teammates, however abnormal that might be. And I say that because it really ties into the Rams Rise Up Challenge, because at the end of the day, they want to be really successful and they want to grow their team. They want to grow their program. They want to be better. So the one thing that has not changed is that we always want to continue to increase their capital improvements. We want to increase what we can do for the athletes. And the Rams Rise Up Challenge, the annual giving day for athletics this year, will be Thursday, November 12th. This is the fourth year in a row that we've had it in the fall. And it's one of our two largest fundraisers that we have on campus for athletics. One being the Robert C. Lockyer Golf Outing, the other being the Rams Rise Up Challenge. Obviously, the Robert C. Lockyer Golf Outing was canceled for this year. And so now, like more than ever, we are asking our wonderful philanthropic supporters to make this a real reality to help the athletes improve and to help the athletes grow their programs. We have some really cool challenges. There were a whole bunch of folks, some of you who are on the call tonight, who were usually supporting the golf outing and have then 100% pivoted their philanthropic support over to the Rams Rise Up Challenge, and we appreciate that. We're going to challenge our athletes. We're going to challenge our alumni. We're trying to hit a goal of 600 unique donors on one 24-hour segment. Last year, we were a little bit over 500, and so we're going to up the ante. Like any good coach would, like any good athlete would, like up their own ante in terms of how they perform. So that's what we're going to do too. And so we just hope that you can help us out. If you're on the call, we can help that you can hope that you can share the news to help our athletes and obviously make this a huge success for our programs.
Veronica, is there any questions that we can answer?
Yep, we've got a couple that have come through. Our first question is, now, obviously you've discussed about the impact of COVID-19, but what would you say is the biggest challenge that that you've had to deal with since the pandemic hit?
I would probably say two things. A lot of the decisions are presidential, so you have institutions making decisions, and then you have conference presidents as a whole making decisions. So sometimes they're not necessarily in agreement with each other. So the tendency has been to kick the can down the road to a later date, and then we'll see what happens down later on. Like right now, we've kicked the fall and winter sports to the spring, everything to the spring. So when we get to the spring, if we can't participate, where do we kick the can from there? So that's been a little bit of an issue, trying to plan, trying to make schedules, trying to do budgets, bus companies, those types of things, I think are issues. The biggest problem that we're having right now is the NCAA has requested and mandated for tier one sports, tier one meaning both soccers, both basketballs, volleyball, lacrosse, and crew to test 3 times a week. So that would mean we would test on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for every student athlete. So the cost associated with that is challenging. Even though we're Thomas Jefferson, even though we're located at a hospital, the tests that we currently use right now are very expensive. So to try to duplicate that and do it for all those student athletes is extremely expensive. So the other problem on top of that is the city of Philadelphia currently wants us to test every day. So if you take 3 days a week and then multiply it or add on to 7 days a week, you can see the cost considerably more. So that's a big problem. Testing is a major problem. In some cases, it may cause institutions to not be able to afford to play. And that is not a discussion we're having, but it could be a reality at some point if the city does not back off of that. Dr. Cromartie handles the negotiations with that, along with the other presidents and chief operating officers in the city. So we'll see how good his negotiating powers are, but we're optimistic that we can at least get into the NCAA mandate number of 3.
Our next question: through some pen relay plaques, we found out that PTI, that's Philadelphia Textile Institute, had track teams back into the 1930s. So we have a documented history of about 85 years. I don't believe Jefferson ever competed in intercollegiate sports. Do we know how far back basketball and soccer competitions goes in our history?
Thomas Jefferson, to the best of my knowledge, has never competed in intercollegiate sports until we started with them in 2017. I'm assuming this is a Dave Gingras question, but I may be wrong. Dave, first of all, if there's any PTI history that you have, or any whomever is asking the question has, we certainly can add it to our website and our cross country or track website. But I am not off the top of my head, without checking, I cannot tell you when soccer started. Basketball, I know there's memorabilia hanging here from the late 30s, early 40s with PTI, and there are pictures with Bucky Harris coaching. So an exact year, I don't know, but I believe you could find those 2 answers on our website in the archives. But as far as that old track information, get it. If you get that to me, we will get it to Rob Cunningham. We will get it as part of our historical look on our website for track.
Thanks, Coach. Our next question: has CACC set requirements for spectator attendance?
They have not. It has not been a discussion yet. And one of the ways I like to frame this is the CACC can make a recommendation, which the university could then trump. So if the CACC said no spectators and the institution said that we could have spectators, we could do that institutionally, but the real mandate lies with the city. So when the time comes for spectators, which the earliest that would be is January 12th for basketball, then we would find out if we can or if we cannot. If we can, we certainly will do social distancing. We'll mark the seats off accordingly. We actually have brand new bleachers that were put in right at the end of basketball season last year and have never been used yet. So they're brand new logos, brand new seats. So we have not even used them once. So we're looking forward to that. So I don't have an answer. However, the first 3 sports would be the 2 basketballs and volleyball, and they are all broadcast. So if there's parental concerns or family concerns, you would be able to at least watch them on the internet. But I would venture to guess that the CACC will make a unified decision in terms of yes or no. But nothing's been done at this point.
Okay, well, that is all for our questions so far. We have some time if anyone does have any further questions.
Coach Shirley,
Otherwise-
I have a question,
Hi, Chris.
which I think others would be interested to hear.
There's no more budget money for you, no.
Yeah, thank you. Darn it. You had talked earlier about each individual institution having to make their own calls as to where they were going to play, what they were going to play, if they could get COVID test, if they could not get COVID test. Well, the NCAA also has rules of how many times you can play and who you can or cannot play. if there's teams in our conference that can't or that decide not to play, how could that, I guess, like negatively affect us?
Well, I think that might be two questions, but first of all, the CACC rule is if 50% of the schools that participate in that sport choose to play, the CACC, with presidential permission, would host a championship. So if 7 basketball schools agree to play and we meet the presidential caveats and we test many times we need to test, we would have a season. How that would look, the ADs would have to work that out. As far as the NCAA, we do not have to play. Post University in Waterbury, Connecticut, which is largely a remote school, has already announced they're not playing intercollegiate athletics in this calendar year, or excuse me, academic year. So we already know they're not playing any sports. That's an institutional decision. They do not have to play. They will not be penalized. The only thing that would hurt them is if your basketball players play a minimum of 11 games, they would get another season of eligibility back, which means they could get a 6th year of eligibility. By not participating, post-student athletes would not have that opportunity. So that's the NCAA also has been very, I guess you could say, smart, and they haven't made a lot of decrees. They've decreed how many games we can play. For example, in basketball, our minimum is 11, our maximum is 22. But in terms of COVID, everything they're giving us is recommendations. They're not about to go out and give us mandates. They're giving us recommendations, aside from the amount of time we need to test. So the thought being, if we as a university do not follow the NCAA recommendations and something happens, they could always go back and say, well, we did make a recommendation and Thomas Jefferson chose not to follow it. So certainly we're trying our best to follow the recommendations of the NCAA, but more importantly, the recommendations of the city.
I have a follow-up question on that, Coach. Yeah. So we pushed back all of our fall sports. Did the NCAA change the championships of those, or did they keep those championships in the fall?
The NCAA agreed to not host fall championships, not reschedule them, just not host them. So there will be no opportunity for soccer or volleyball to play in an NCAA championship this year, as was the case last spring when the spring sports were not, and the winter sports were not given an opportunity to play an NCAA championship. So we as a CACC have said we're going to play soccer in our conference only and volleyball in our conference only, and hopefully crown a CACC championship. But that would be the end of the road. They would not be able to go on and play in an NCAA tournament. Now, right now, the basketball championship is still on, but that would probably be the first to go if this COVID turns the way they're predicting it's going to turn.
So when we look back at like history books and we look at 2020 with the NCAA, there will be no NCAA champion in any of their 98 or 99 sports. That's interesting.
Correct. In 2020, yes. Correct. There'll be no spring 2020 and no fall 2020. Correct. So, I mean, the big implication here is for the student athlete. I mean, do I come back for a 6th year? And, our scholarships in most cases are not full. So am I going to spend another $20,000, $25,000 to come back and be a student athlete? And that's where that additional scholarship money helps. Or am I going to move on with my life? And then, you have some kids that are, we had a young lady last year that had 148 hits in softball. And our banner in the gym recognizes players that get 150 hits. So we actually played 4 spring games and she got 6 hits. And then we had to call the NCAA and they said, yes, they would count those statistics. So she decided not to come back because she achieved her goal of 150 hits. So there's, everyone seems to have a different thought process and a different reason for either staying in school, leaving school, whatever the case would be.
Coach, we've got a couple of more questions that have come in.
Sure.
So the first one is, how is recruiting going for men's basketball after losing 4 starters to graduation?
recruiting for the class of 20 went very well. I mean, they're going to have 4 new faces on the floor, obviously in terms of starting role, but they have some really good players that that again, they're only seeing them 4 hours a week, but the recruiting class went well. They're going to have they should field a team of about 13 players altogether. The issue really lies with the 21s because now we have a chance to bring a couple seniors back, and what will happen there. So I think the team's going to be very competitive. I mean, they made it to the finals last year of the conference tournament. Coach Riley and Coach McGee are very optimistic. Certainly, it's not the comfort level they had last year with those 4 seniors, but I think they'll be pretty good. You never have to worry about a team coached by Coach McGee.
That's great to hear. It's a great vote of confidence. Our next question, how will you comply with the Philadelphia social distance restrictions? Will the university have to hold practices off campus and outside of city locations?
Well, we're going to abide by them as best we can. When we're in a playing situation, be it 5-on-5 or 11-on-11, we're going to play the game as the game needs to be played. So there will not be social distancing. There will be bodily contact, but we will be bench players and bench assistant coaches will be wearing masks. The seats on the sideline will be socially distant, or the benches. The basketball situation, they're looking for us to take 5 chairs out on the floor, socially distance them, and leave the rest of the group back, and then have a assistant coach relay what the head coach just said in the huddle. So we're working on, for example, for my team, at the end of the practice, I say the words together on 3, and then our players count 1, 2, 3 together. But we do that with 4 people on one sideline, 4 people on the baseline, and 4 people on the other sideline. So we don't come together in any sport in a huddle. At this point, we are allowing student athletes that want to play in masks to play in masks or practice in masks if they so choose in the 5-on-5 or 11-on-11. But when we play games under the NCAA rules, those people will not be masked, nor will the referee. So you'll have the 13 people that are on the floor that will not be wearing masks. So we're going to comply as best we can. We're going to follow the standards that are set out by mainly the city of Philadelphia, because they're the most stringent. Dr. Cromartie seems to get new ones every day. I just got a set from him yesterday. So we will make every effort. And the biggest thing we're trying to do is keep away from the high fives and the back slaps and the hand slaps. And I think we've tried to manage that. And we're also trying to coach in pods, which means smaller groups. And we're trying to keep roommates in the pods because they're already living with each other. So we feel that there's been no negative exchanges. So that's kind of the things that we're trying to do. And we're also telling student athletes on any given day, you do not have to practice if you do not feel up to it. They are getting a temperature check every day, and they are completing an app the night before between 7 and 9 p.m., attesting to the fact that they don't have a sore throat, they don't have a cough, they don't have aches and pains. And our athletic trainers are not letting them practice if they don't fill out the app the night before. And I can tell you that's a fact because we lost a couple players for a practice. So hopefully that answers your question.
Here's a personal question.
Yep.
You've built a fantastic athletic program over the years. You have been at the university and have led a championship women's basketball program with a record-breaking number of wins. What remains on your bucket list?
Good question. You know what? I don't think I have a bucket list anymore. I just really, I feel fortunate that I was able to come to a great place to work when it was textile, and then certainly Philly U and now Jefferson. I've worked for 3 great presidents, and now working for Dr. Cromartie has been really a great collaborative effort. So it's just a question of, at age 66, how much longer can I go? How much longer, I think my decisions will be more health related than they will be wanting to be here, because I like being here. I like coaching the players. I enjoy the thrill of victory, I guess, in the agony of defeat. So I think it's just But at the same time, it's also trying to keep it in as best shape as possible so that we can pass it on to the next generation. But the compliments that the individual gave me, thank you. But that's also built on great players, really quality student athletes, great assistant coaches, good head coaches, great administrative staff. So a lot of people have made this a pretty good place. And I think you can't just say thank you to me. You have to thank the generations that have come through here.
That's great. Oh, it's a great answer. Thank you for that. We did have one more question that came through, but it was partial. So I'll see if we can get that back. Otherwise, if there are any other questions, Chris, do you have any further questions for Coach? Or Coach, do you have any questions
No,
for Chris?
I want to just say thank you for everybody that participated tonight. We really appreciate the support you give us and the support you give our student athletes. If you're able to get involved with the Rams Rise Up Challenge, we would really appreciate that. Again, it's November 12th, starting at, I believe it's 12 noon to 12 noon, if I'm not mistaken, right, Veronica? Is that correct?
12 a.m. to 12 a.m.
12 a.m. I'm sorry. 12, yeah, okay. 12. Okay. So, and of course, the scholarship opportunity that we have. And then if there's anyone that wants to play golf, we always look forward to golfers for the Robert Lockyer outing. And if you ever want to come out and see our teams play or go down to Boathouse Row and see Chris's team, I mean, we're happy to have you come to practice or come to a game and, do whatever we can do to show you around the campus. So for those of you that have not been back, it's changed dramatically and it's in great shape. And, it's an easy sell when we recruit because it's just really it's a good place to be. Chris, do you want to wrap it up?
I think there might be one other question, Coach, if Veronica can get back on.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. We'll take our final two questions now. The question that's just come back in, is there a specific plan in place if a student has to be hospitalized because of COVID?
Well, the process at the moment is if a student was to test positive for COVID and they chose to go home, they are certainly permitted to go home and do their 14-day quarantine with their family. If they are not able to do that geographically or they feel that they want to stay on campus, for those of you familiar with the campus, the townhouses were set aside this year for individual quarantine. So students are placed in that townhouse setting for 14 days. The Office of Housing will check on them to make sure that they're doing okay. And the food service director will make sure that their meals are provided to them as well. And of course, their professors are notified if they had a live class that they would now be taking that class online. If there was a situation where hospitalization occurred, which I'm not aware that there has been, Roxborough Memorial Hospital, which is 5 minutes away, would be the closest first stop. But I'm sure in any situation, if we could, we would get them to Jefferson and Center City. So our security is very attentive. Steph Karp does our security. So if someone were to need to be transported, I'm sure that's what they would do. But the most that we've seen are individuals being quarantined in the townhouses or going home. And there is I guess, if you look on our website, there's a COVID-19 website which shows the count of the cases that we've had on the campus, so people can be made aware of the situation and where we are. So I hope that helps.
Yes, definitely. This one's a question for both of you, actually. Can you give us an example of how Rams Rise Up works?
Chris.
I can take that one. So the Rams Rise Up is a 24-hour online crowdfunding event. By crowdfunding, in case you're not familiar with it, it's an online format to raise money for certain things. In this case, it's our athletic teams. So the way it would work is, let's say Coach is a coach and I'm the athlete. So Coach is asking his athletes to share the website link with their friends, their family, their influencers. Coach is also reaching out to his alumni. Coach is going to reach out to his former athletes in hopes to have them support the programs. Each coach would, in essence, have a little, I guess, website link that goes over the needs of the program, the wishes of the program, how to make the program more successful than what it is today, and what that will take, both from a competitive point of view and from a financial point of view. So where it gets really interesting is that that all of our athletes are competitive. So internally, we have a lot of supporters. So we've created some challenges for those athletes to help the cause and for the alumni to help the cause. For example, and I don't want to go like too far into the weeds here, but a really good example is that we're going to challenge each of the teams to to have the highest amount of donors possible. The team with the highest amount of donors um, relative to their roster size will win a significant amount of like money towards their programs. So, for example, Coach Shirley, he has 13 on the roster. So, if he has 13 individual people donate to women's basketball, his participation rate would be 100%. If he has 26 people donate, it would be 200%. So, at the end of that 24-hour crowdfunding period, the team with the highest participation percentage will win extra financial dollars to support their program. So the idea is to get as many people as you can to rally around your program, to rally around athletics, to rally around the Ram Fund in support of these athletes.
Just to give everybody an idea of where will that money go? Well, that particular money Chris is talking about would go to women's basketball fundraising account. And last year, the year before when we won the championship, historically what we do is buy some level of a shirt, whatever they want, for a value of about $25 to commemorate the CACC championship. Last year, the question came up, well, it's the second year, could we get a jacket? So the women's basketball team got a jacket at a little bit more money, and that money came from the women's basketball fundraising account, which in part came from Rams Rise Up. So that's the type of thing that we're able to do with monies like this. Chris, do you want to mention that auction as well?
Yeah, so I actually mentioned earlier that a lot of our supporters from the Robert C. Lockyer the golf outing, then began to pivot their support towards the Rams Rise Up Challenge. Exactly what that means is that a lot of our supporters who will not necessarily donate financially, but will donate in kind, like foursomes for golf or unique auction items that are rare, like rare finds. We weren't able to auction those off, so those donors then said, well, you can auction them off if it works for the Rams Rise Up Challenge. So as a lead in and as some extra excitement on November 12th, we're going to also auction off about 8 to 10 items over the course of the day. Veronica, I'm not sure if we have the website address yet, but because I don't know that it's live yet, but if we do not, I'll make sure that we get everybody on this call the link to each of those sites.
Just an example, Bob Lockyer had donated a foursome at Merion Golf Club, a threesome along with him. And when we didn't have the outing, he said, just keep it and use it for Rams Rise Up. So there will be the ability to bid to play golf at Merion if something like that interests you.
Thanks for the explanation, gentlemen. Our final question, and we've got just a few minutes left. So if you are able to answer it as quickly as you can, how many of the athletes have had COVID so far this year? How many students total on the East Falls campus? Would you know?
Dr. Cromartie, are you on this call by any chance? Okay, hearing none. The last total that I looked at, which was last Friday, was 87 total and 26 athletes. Now, the one thing that I will use as a caveat is, unfortunately, a lot of this is coming from people whose roommates have COVID and our athletes are living with them. And in some cases, people that are living off campus in houses in Roxborough and houses in Manayunk. I mean, we haven't had situations that we're aware of that were kind of athlete to athlete, in part, I think, because of that app, and in part because anyone with any symptoms has been getting tested right away. So that's where we are. And that board continues to scroll. And the other thing is there is a setup in the back of Harris Gym where students can just walk up and during the course of the day, except for an hour at lunch, and they can be tested. So I think it's a very test-friendly program, although it's unfortunate we need to get testing, but that's just the reality of where we are. So 25 to 30 student athletes out of 300. I mean, I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, you want it to be zero, but we feel like that we've tried to manage it as best we can.
That's great. Coach, thanks so much for your explanation. And again, thank you so much. And thank you, Chris, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thanks for updating us with all the latest. And I will just pull up a slide with some further information. So you can look out for more exclusive online events coming up throughout the month of November, such as the vaccine race with our provost and SKMC Dean, Dr. Mark Tikachinsky, Inside Baseball Talk with former talent scout Al Goldis from the class of 68, and tax saving tips with alumnus Mike Zimmerman from the class of 98. Registration is open for all these events at jefferson.edu/alumni events. We hope you will follow us through our social channels to find out more about our upcoming exclusive events. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, in addition to our Jefferson webpage. And during this challenging time, we are asking alumni, benefactors, and friends to help us reimagine the way we educate tomorrow's leaders. These challenging times have led us to launch the Reimagined Scholarship Initiative to help our students stay enrolled in this upcoming academic year. Whether you want to help students with the greatest financial need or support a student within a specific college or area of interest, your contributions make a difference. By supporting our scholarship campaign at jefferson.edu/reimagined scholarships, you can have a lasting impact on our students. The campaign ends tomorrow night at 11:59 p.m., so please don't delay. No gift is too small. And just as Coach and Chris had mentioned earlier, we have our second annual Rams Rise Up Challenge, which is our 24-hour campaign on Thursday, November 12th. And we don't have the website just yet, but Chris, as he mentioned, can forward the information to you all. And thanks again to everyone who joined us this evening. We appreciate your support and your interest in the athletics. And we hope you stay well and you stay safe. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.